At Sierra, discover great deals on top brand workout gear, like high-quality bikes, which might lead to another discovery. Getting back on the saddle isn't always comfortable. Good news is Sierra has massage guns. And chafe wipes, too. Discover top brands at unexpectedly low prices. Sierra, let's get moving.
Welcome to Texas History Lessons. I'm Michael, and hey, how's it going? It's been a while. I haven't released an episode since I did part 6 of the Battle of San Jacinto, and yeah, that's a long time. I'm recording this on November the 19th. September 2nd to November 19th, and I actually had recorded all 6 of those episodes a lot earlier than that, and yeah, my attempts to get ahead and stay ahead kind of fell apart, and there are a lot of things that contributed to that. I never stopped working. I was going to follow up with an episode called After San Jacinto and look into the question of, did the Battle of San Jacinto win Texas independence? And the easy answer is, oh yeah, of course, because go just Google it. But actually, the answer is a little bit more complicated than that, and I found some really interesting stories. And as it happens when I do research, I start with one subject, and then that kind of tangents off, and I find lots of other things I'm interested in that I want to cover and learn about and then share. Lots of them have come out of just looking at these things in the 1830s, and a lot of people whose lives I've discovered that normally aren't talked about or shared, just because it doesn't fit into a more concise look at Texas history. And that's all well and good. There's nothing sinister in that, because how do you do it? Like in a class setting and all that, it's really, really difficult. And, but that's the beauty of what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to take my time. I can look into anything I want to, do research on anything I want to. And that blossoms out into lots of different subjects. So yeah, I started After San Jacinto. Before that one, I was actually researching another one I've entitled Immortal Houston. And that was a look at Sam Houston and how he has gone from being somebody who wasn't necessarily that adored or respected even in the state of Texas. Even though he did have political success, he wasn't always liked by that many people. And by the time of his death, he was definitely not respected, or it's actually kind of interesting that he came back to become the immortal of Texas history. That, he's got the giant statue down on I-45 in Huntsville on the way to Houston, and the largest, tallest statue of an American hero, in quotes, in the world. And how did that happen? And doing that, I dove into all the different things that help shape our understanding of our cultural memory, our shared history, and why Houston is looked on with so much respect. Now, when his own lifetime, he wasn't. He was honest to a point, and even in his lifetime, he knew he was not always what was considered respectable. He had some rough times in life. But yeah, that was one. And in that, I look at art, paintings, sculpture, literature, stories that were written, the way histories were written. And we've talked about Henderson Yoakum's history of Texas. That was considered by many the first more scholarly or more thorough history of Texas. There were lots of histories before then written and after that, but he approached it, in a way that stood the test of time and is looked at as the first history of Texas, the first really more thorough and with an attempt to use historical documents and things like that. But I digress. And all the other people that have written about histories and the biographies of Houston, and, Stephen F. Austin, when he died, there was a reason he didn't win the presidency for the Republic of Texas, on the first ballot when Houston won. because a lot of people didn't trust him. A lot of people thought he was soft on the way he approached independence, because he had worked really hard to keep Texas in the Mexican Republic, until he realized he just couldn't do it anymore. And that's a long, interesting story. But, Houston was a supporter of his and helped keep. He's the one, I think, that's in one of the announcements of Austin's death, called him the father of Texas. And but over time, Austin's place in Texas history was rehabilitated. And a lot also has to do with art and things that were written and the stories that we tell each other and all of that. And that also led me into a tangent on, what happened to a lot of these people, the veterans of San Jacinto and the war for independence. And I've gone down a rabbit hole on that and the veterans groups that would meet yearly. And how did we in Texas commemorate? The story about the Alamo, how it was used as a warehouse, and the United States, it wasn't this sacred shrine for a very long time. But yeah, I've been looking at a lot of things like that, and that's fascinating to me. Is why do we think the way we do about our history? And a lot of that is because of the work people have done to preserve certain things and promote certain ideas. But yeah, so I've not been working. And in fact, this is just off the cuff. One of the reasons I haven't recorded in quite a while is my computer died. Yeah. And that was a bit of a hold up. I just delayed in getting a new one. One, cause the money that it would cost to get a new one. There are other things my family needs than just this. And I, for the most part, I can still do some notes on my phone and research and stuff. And I went back to just good old fashioned note cards, to be honest. And it was kind of nice going back and sitting with a book or looking at something and taking notes and categorizing it the way that I was taught to ever since really high school. In high school history classes and English classes, I was taught to do that. And then in college, the professor there said, use note cards. That way you can order stuff. But again, I'm digressing. This is just, like I said, off the cuff. I don't have any notes in front of me. But I've been working on lots of things, and let's see. But I got a new computer. Yeah, that's what I was talking about. I got a new computer finally. And, oh God, it's such an improvement over what I had already. That thing that I've been using, I've had it for at least a decade, I think. And it's been a good one. It's been a really good one. But finally, it just went away. The battery died and had some other issues. And it's been something I've been wanting to upgrade for a while. And finally, this week, I bit the bullet and said, I'm just going to go do it. I'm going to find one that's okay. And actually, it's a lot better than I expected, the one I've selected here. And fortunately, I was able to save everything documents-wise and, family pictures and all my music, all the recordings that I have saved from the podcast and other things. And that's all well and good. And I didn't lose anything. And actually, I have recently, last few months, I've started leaning heavily on storing my information and actually just writing, because whether I'm at home or like I said, I've got my phone or anywhere, logging into like Google Docs and keeping things going there. I can be on my wife's computer or her laptop when we're on a trip or something, and I can just pull up what I'm working on and I can put some notes. And that's another reason that's something I've been getting used to, and it's useful to have that accessibility in case of something like this that just happened with my laptop that died. But so I'm just kind of testing things out. I got the software downloaded onto this new system, trying to get things organized and see how it works. And hopefully we just kind of keep going. And, it's good for me to have a break as well, because, some people might have caught on to this, but I've been actually processing through a long reboot and a refocus of the podcast, what I want to do, what I'm trying to do. and, trying to figure it out myself. And it's been over a year. I've been kind of asking questions of myself and how I'm going about things and what actually I'm doing. I had an idea when I started the podcast, and I got pulled in other directions and didn't really follow suit with what I started out doing. But I'm going back to that and reconfiguring how I'm going to approach things, because there are lots of different options for things, and I want to tell good, interesting stories along with just doing it in a different way, from a different perspective, because there are lots of different ways to look at the past. And that involves educating myself on how to approach things from different subjects. But that said, I've got a lot going on. I do have the After San Jacinto pretty much, it's almost, it's like 90% done. There are some things I need to go in and tweak, and I have a couple of people that are going to go over it and assist me with basically fact checking, are my ideas sound, and I've got some adjustments to make. It's got over 151 footnotes now, and there's more that will be in it that I haven't added to it. It's a long one. It's going to be just as long or longer than the one I did on San Jacinto. So it'll probably be broken up into different sections, because who wants to sit, and I'm sure some of you already turned it off and stopped listening to me now after about 11, 12 minutes of me just rambling. That's why notes are valuable, because if I didn't have the notes, this is what you'd get. But I've got that. Let me see, go back here. And this new computer's much faster. It's just really nice. I've got that. I've got an episode that I was going to use as a filler episode on 1836. I'm calling it 1836, An Experiment in Perspective. And basically, it's kind of a weird one. It's me humoring my curious side of how to create something. And it is not going to be ever finished. It's kind of me trying to do Texas history, looking at what some consider as the most significant year in the history of Texas, and put it into a context little bit different, a lot different, really, than what we're used to seeing. Because, we do have this habit in Texas of, when we study Texas history, we're studying Texas history. And, some good teachers and some good books do bring in the wider, broader context of the world. But I said, let's do something a little bit kind of different, a little bit strange. Let's really get into the setting, and I'll be looking at some significant and key things that happened before 1836 and the Battle of the San Jacinto, Battle of Goliad, Battle of the Alamo, and some things that contributed in a way, one way or another, and some things that really didn't, just to show what was the world like, what had it been like in Texas in the previous, 50 to 100 years. And that was just kind of the prologue to the main part, where it's 1836. And it's looking at Texas, what was happening in Texas. Not in great detail on any of these events, but just a lot of key things that were shaping the world at that time. Let me jump down here to the very end and share part of this. The age that these events happened in, some call it the age of Jackson. We had it was the age of revolutions. We had Paul Johnson has a really big, pretty interesting book that I read many years ago called The Birth of the Modern. And in it, part of one quote from that book, he focused from 1815 to 1830 and covers how the years after the Napoleonic Wars helped shape the world into what the modern age, And a short quote here. He wrote, "The United States transformed itself from a struggling ex-colony into a formidable nation, growing fast in territory and population and embracing democratic politics. Russia, too, was expanding fast, and at the same time was developing the fatal fissures in her society which were to engulf her in the immense tragedies of the 20th century. In China and Japan, Also, the seeds of future catastrophes were being sown. Latin America came into independent and troubled existence, and the first stirring of modernity were felt in Turkey and Egypt, Southeast Asia, the Middle East, and the Balkans. In India, the British were moving deeper into the subcontinent and beginning to modernize it. They were breaking out of their coastal enclaves in South Africa and Australia and striking inland. All over the world, the last wildernesses in the Pampas and the steppes, in the Mississippi Valley and Canada, in the Himalayas and the Andes, were being penetrated or settled by the advanced societies, and their peoples were being subdued, in some cases annihilated. Never before or since had so much cheap land become available, and the hungry peoples of Europe were moving overseas in vast numbers to possess it. These political, economic, and demographic changes, all without precedent in their scale and future significance, were accompanied by powerful new currents in music, in painting, literature, and philosophy, some ennobling and refreshing, some sinister. The book attempts to show how deeply painters, musicians, writers were involved in the great events of these years. I have tried, he wrote, throughout not to compartmentalize politics and economics, science and engineering, the arts and literature, but to present them as they really were, closely enmeshed, reacting one upon another, parts of the seamless garment of a society exhilarated and sometimes bewildered by the rapid changes which were transforming it. And the events, this is me talking, not Paul Johnson, and the events of 1836 and the 1830s and afterwards were set right in the middle of all the things he's talking about here. And that's one of the things I'm experimenting to do on this episode, or there's probably going to be a couple of episodes about just 1836. What was going on in the world? Who was around that would have heard about the Battle of the Alamo? Like, do you know Walt Whitman has a poem that he mentions the Alamo, but the focus of his poem is on the Battle of Goliad. So I'm tweaking it. It's going to have a lot of things that in it that, well, why did you put that? Well, because it works in my head a little bit, and you'll be saying, well, you missed some things. And I'm like, yeah, that's why I've got an email address. You can write me at texashistorylessons@gmail.com if you have suggestions to anything. And thanks for those that have done that in the past. So that's just that. I've got one called The Founding Fathers at San Jacinto. And, you know, a lot of you are saying there were no founding fathers at San Jacinto if you're meaning the founding fathers of the United States. And yeah, but there's a twist to that. And that's going to be an interesting little fun one that I want to do. You know, what else do I have working on? I'm working on a primary source reader. That's mostly for myself, but I'm going to try to incorporate that into something else to publish someday. I've got an episode on the Texas toad. Yeah, let's see. What else am I working on? Texas Gulf shrimp. I've got one, I'm still working on one on Kelton, Elmer Kelton, and looking forward to doing that one. And then another one just on historical fiction and the uses of it. You know, if you haven't read Harrigan's Gates of the Alamo or anything he's written, you're doing a disservice to yourself. That is such a useful book, just not for just the entertainment sake, but because he gets the history really thoroughly covered, and he does a good job. I've got accounts by John Salmon Ford that he published in 1895 on the origin and fall of the Alamo. I want to get into. I've got a Mexican account of the storming of the Alamo I want to cover. I've got Joe's account of the Alamo and looking into his life and the mystery of it after the year of 1836. I've got a project on Anson Jones. This is one I've been working on for a long time. I've got a project where I'm going to someday cover the life of Sam Houston, and there are a lot of older biographies that I'm looking into. Like I have a copy here of the 1884 life of Sam Houston. There is one. The name is, and this is one I started a long time ago, and I'm glad I didn't record it back then because there are a lot of things I want to go in and adjust it and make it even better. It's a really lengthy project called A Bird's Eye View of Galveston History. and that is taking a look at Galveston history from way back up until just before the storm of 1900. Another thing I'm working on is the memories of the soldiers that were at San Jacinto. I've got a project on Reuben Marmaduke Potter and the Alamo, and he's the Potter that I mentioned in that poetry in the Texas Revolution, and I just couldn't put it. I knew the answer when I recorded it. Again, that's why it's good for me to have my notes worked out before I record something. He's the Potter that had written that, and his life story is rather interesting as well. I've got another interesting article I came over from 1836, or actually I think it was in 1837. It's published. It's called An Honest Man, and it's a really surprising take on the way people looked at things. And, you know, the value of land prices seems to have a lot of interest at the time because of land speculations and things like that. The founding fathers of San Jacinto, I mentioned that one. I've got my project on the Cormac McCarthy book, Blood Meridian, that I'm still putting notes together on. And let's see, a lot of things here. Texas slave narratives I've been digging into, trying to look into those and gather some good information for the future. There are biographies of people that were on both sides of the conflict of 1835, 1836, Mexican Army and the Texas Army that I want to present and give some highlights from their lives, because and one in particular was a young man named Henry Teal. He was a captain. He didn't fight at San Jacinto because he was with the sick. He actually had the measles. He didn't get to fight. But he was a trusted soldier, and I don't want to get into it here, but what happened to him actually ties into his surprising and unexpected murder after the war was over, which leads to a story to a gang that was operating on the Natchez Trace, and in that area, that's Mark Twain later said, basically, this gang makes the James Boys look like Boy Scouts. That's not an exact quote, but basically that's what Mark Twain said. That's just a teaser for that. I'm working on a project about the Alamo through time, Western movies and literature in association with Texas history, on the filibusters, the Age of Revolution and the filibusters, and looking at things like that. Tory Hill, have you ever heard of that? A look at the people that were, I guess you'd call them Mexican loyalists, that we don't talk about, or that they weren't talked about a lot because they were considered traitors, but there were a lot of them. There were a lot of people that were just, let's just not stir a problem up here. We're working and trying to get through our lives here, and a lot of newcomers came in and kind of messed things up. What else? The list goes on. I've got all kinds of different projects here. One of my favorites is on the Delaware Indians and their presence in Texas. Again, Deaf Smith and Juan Seguin, some articles I found about them that were from the 1830s. And, it's literally an endless thing. And to go back to the idea that I'm kind of refocusing and rebooting this series on the 1830s and all that will end with a focus at Texas today and a look at who we are now, what we're like now, and how that should affect the way we look at Texas history. Oh yeah, there's a new history organization in the state of Texas as well. I've spoken fondly about the Texas State Historical Association. I still love its history and the things it's accomplished. But there is a new group called the Alliance for Texas History, and that it exists does go into some of the controversy I had some episodes about last year. And there's a lot of great people in that, and I'm happy to be a member of that group. I'm a member of the first 500 to sign up to be a part of it. I'm very supportive of their work, and I'm looking forward to what they are going to try to do. And that said, I still support the Texas State Historical Association, its mission to share and promote Texas history. But Texas is big, and this history is even bigger. And there's room for lots of different ways of approaching things. And I'm not going to say the names, but I hopefully, as things settle down, as the year comes to a close, I'm going to have two prominent people in that new association, the Alliance for Texas History, join me. One of them is a big surprise, and for myself, that is even an opportunity. I've wanted to have people from the Texas State Historical Association on in the past, and it's just very hard for me to schedule and do interviews. That's why I really don't do them that much, but I am going to do this. I'm looking forward to it. But I'm going to take a look at that, and then we're going to start back over, kind of. I'm not going to re-record the earlier episodes, but I'm going to kind of focus and start telling some stories, sharing some stories that I think would be beneficial and entertaining to people and educational. And I think I've rambled enough. God, I've talked for 26 minutes without any notes in front of me here. And I hope this sounds well. I'm really happy with the way this computer works. Super fast, much faster than my other one was. The software that I record with seems to be the update that they've done is working really nice. And one of the things in closing, I don't bring politics into the podcast because I don't want to. That's not my purpose. I want my podcast to be for everybody in Texas and beyond that's interested in Texas history and just history in general. That being said, I have been accused by some of being ultra conservative and focusing on blah, 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 blah. And others have accused me of being ultra liberal and trying to promote an agenda in the same thing. And I guess that means I'm doing it right. That being said, we just had an election, and a lot of people are celebrating and a lot of people are having a very bad time. And I wish I had some words of comfort for those that are having a hard time. And the only thing I can think to say is, if you feel like things are terrible, then don't give up on this American experiment. For those of you that are celebrating about how the election turned out, then, have fun. And I hope that it all works out for everybody's best interests over the next 4 years. And, but for those that are saddened and having a tough time, I know a lot of people personally, even in the state of Texas. Yeah, it's weird. There are people here that don't really like the way things have turned out. But to both sides, I still want to promote a naive, I guess on my part, hope that we can work together for the betterment of everybody. And because we are under the microscope right now. We are a part of history. And historians in the future are going to have a really, really difficult time explaining what's going on. And it's going to be exciting to write it as they delve into our present, and which would be their past. And it's important, as I always say, because a couple of quotes from James Baldwin. And the first one is, "For history, as nearly no one seems to know, is not merely something to be read, and it does not refer merely or even principally to the past. On the contrary, the great force of history comes from the fact that we carry it within us, are unconsciously controlled by it in many ways, and history is literally present in all that we do. It could scarcely be otherwise, since it is to history that we owe our frames of reference, our identities, and our aspirations." And another two quotes from Baldwin that I find very inspirational and I think about a lot. He also said or wrote, "History is not the past. It is the present. We carry our history with us. We are our history. If we pretend otherwise, we are literally criminals. Think about that. The importance of historical understanding and education is unfortunately pretty neglected. And, that's another reason I do this. I'm not trying to promote myself as knowing everything, but I want people to think more about their history. And the last quote by Baldwin is, American history is longer, larger, more various, more beautiful, and more terrible than anything anyone has ever said about it. And I think that's the best way to end this little bonus episode. I got my computer up and running. I'm going to release this, and I'm going to be getting some other things out soon, and keep writing and reading and researching. I hope you're doing well, but let's just end it like this. Take care of yourself. Take care of one another. Most importantly, try to be kind. Adios.